Hi there and welcome to this lecture about the Black Plague. My name is Marcus Henriksson and I'm a history teacher here in Sweden. So what was the Black Plague or Black Death? Well, it was a widespread outbreak of plague. All the three forms of plague at the same time, that is the bubonic plague, the pneumonic plague and the dengue plague. And they all occurred during the time of the Black Death or Black Plague. When, you might ask? Well, between the years 1346 to 1353. So in the 1400s. How many people died? Well, most historians believe that between 30 to 40% of Europe's population died and almost half of Asia's population. Also, many people in Africa were affected. We don't really know the numbers for sure. But it is estimated that a total of 200 million people died in just a few years' time. And at that time, the world had a total population of 500 million. So 40% of the entire Earth's population died. Why so many? Well, it was easy during this time for the infection to spread. Most societies during this time had become more and more global. They traded with one another. Also, the ships during this time had evolved and people used to trade between cities and between countries a lot. We also have the Silk Road, which also contributed to the spread of the plague. On this map you can see how Europe was infected. And basically you can say that the more populated the area, the more the plague spread. So the worst affected areas are about half of France, most of Italy, Greece, Turkey, and so on. What were the symptoms? Well, usually fever, but also stuff like blood in the lungs, blood in the urine, and so on. Most people die often between or within 3 to 5 days. So yeah, it was a really horrible disease in that way. Usually people just lay in bed basically until they died. And more than half of the people that got the infection died. How did it all start? Well, it started in either China or Kyrgyzstan around the year 1334 or 1335. This is still debated among historians. But it is a fact that it was spread with the help of fleas that settled on rats. The rats then mostly got into ships, because there they could find a lot of food that was stored for a long time. And that way the rats could travel from China to a large part of the world, because many countries during this time traded with China. So first it spread in Asia and then to Africa and Europe. It arrived in Constantinople in the year 1347. Here is a fun fact. It was also used by the Mongols as a weapon. Why attack a city when you can just shoot people that have or carried the plague into the city with stuff like catapults? Norway was first in the Nordic countries to receive the plague, but then it moved on to Sweden, for example. There was various tries to stop the infection. Stuff like medicine in form of urine or crushed sapphires didn't work, obviously, but still. Bloodletting, fire, amulets with holy spells and stuff like that, and the famous special costumes in the form of like crows or birds. These costumes, they thought that they could basically scare the plague away. They also tried to lock people inside, that is, to quarantine them. And during this time, this is the start of the word quarantine. Since people didn't know that the plague spread because of rats, they thought to themselves, who was behind it? Could it be perhaps God, maybe? So many people during this time turned to church or God. Some people even took this to an extreme level. They began to relive Jesus' suffering by whipping themselves or walking long distances, even with crosses and stuff like that. Some people believed it was the Jews who carried the plague. So during this time, many Jews were, well, burned to death. Many rich people believed that it was the poor people who carried the infection and the plague. Some believed that it was pets, perhaps dogs or cats. So in England, for example, they killed thousands of dogs and cats. The problem was, though, that the rats spread even further because they have killed all the cats. It was a really late discovery what caused the plague and the Black Death. It would take until the 19th century before it was understood that it was fleas and rats that carried this infection. Here are some of the consequences of the infection and the Black Death. New crops were stopped. The countries received less revenue. That way they couldn't afford to wage wars like before, so most wars just stopped. And a lot of people died, obviously. But because many people died, many people that survived got better lives after the Black Death. There was now a shortage of labor, so many people were able to get higher wages and better payment for their products. They could also afford living. Buy houses and stuff like that. The prices of those fell quite rapidly during this time. One of the reasons people talk about the Middle Ages as a dark period or the Dark Ages, that is mostly because of poverty, wars, and the Black Plague. Here are the sources I have used for this lecture. History by Elisabeth Ivansson, Robert Sandberg and Mattias Tudaj. Perspective on History by Lars Hans and Örjan Nyström. All-Time History Maxi by Hans Hallgren, Börje Bergström and Arne Lövgren. A History of World Societies by John P. McKay. World History New Perspective by Clive Ponting. The Great Plague, the Black Death documentary from Timeline. History of the Black Death, full documentary. The Black Death, and some other sources like Wikipedia, worldhistory.se, and so on. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Otherwise, I wish you a great day. Bye.